This is an experimental course that we and Alex decided to. Essentially, the idea is to help non-technical founders to basically employ a different approach to building, testing, and validating their ideas. And I'll just share like the initial steps of that system, and then Alex will actually demonstrate how that system translates into a working product, and that's going to be our goal for today. So the basic idea is pretty straightforward. There is a biological evolution. And through generations of species, we're evolving a better or more fit species. And that's how we basically got to the current state of the evolution. And the idea is that there are three basic principles in biological evolution. As I'm sure you know, those are the variation, the selection, and the inheritance. And why don't we apply the same principles to basically innovation? Basically, why don't we, when we come up with ideas, we actually generate variations of them, we employ different tools and the market to select the most fit ideas. And then we combine and basically cross the ideas, the different ideas with each other to come up with even better ideas. In mathematics, for instance, there's the concept of genetic algorithms to solve a specific type of math problems. So this is the same kind of approach. And essentially, the toolkit that we're going to cover today, but it's much broader, and that part we're going to cover on our course comprises of the four tools. The first one, we need to leverage the LLMs to research the market and basically cut the time we needed to spend on the market research and on a competitor research, basically. Then we'll use the framework of Alex Osterwalder to basically have a system to generate the different variations of a given idea. Basically, I'll cover it in more detail, but basically the idea is that if we, for instance, if we take DNA, it's basically the sequences of 4 elements. The business model canvas has more elements. Things like, for instance, the customer types. It could be a B2C or B2B, and one of the variations could be, why don't we try to variate between the segments of customers, meaning are we offering this to businesses or to consumers? And we can do even on a more fine-grained, detailed level. Then the third idea is, hey, typically the customer research, the customer interviews is a very expensive and time-consuming operation, while now there's a bunch of research papers that basically prove that many of the insights that people typically get from the customer interviews and user boards, those insights could be captured through simulated user boards. Basically, we would leverage LLMs to act as representatives of our target audience and react to the variations of ideas that we have, and basically tell us whether one sounds promising or not. And that could help us pick and select those variations that should be then prototyped into an actual product, and that's the idea. And last but not least, transform the idea or the variation of an idea into a specific product that actually works. And he will show that today. So the first thing that we're gonna start with is I'm sure you're familiar with the deep research, and this is the mode in ChatGPT or Gemini or other any other most of the other agents out there to research a given idea. And what I'm gonna start with, I need to come up with an idea. And since many of us are digital nomads and we travel a lot, the issue of complying with the tax and visa is very important. So I was like, well, maybe we should build an app for to basically track the number of days we spend in a given country to make sure we comply with the tax and visa regulations. And we would ask ChatGPT in this case to research the market. It's interesting that as we generated, as I asked ChatGPT to do that deep research of this idea, came up with a very interesting segment of customers, like for instance, customers that are Canadians that travel during winter times to US. And there's an added requirement and need to make sure they don't break basically the tax residency limits in US. So the deep research helps us to understand the market, the possible market segments, and essentially come up with a very good understanding of opportunity of a market opportunity and the competitor apps out there. What's more interesting is now, okay, we have the initial idea, an app that lets you track your travel days and to comply with visa or tax regulations. But then how do we generate those variations, those other types of species to basically test them on the market and see which one is the fittest to the current market conditions. So then what we do, and we'll show you over the course how we could basically employ the business model canvas framework to variate different aspects of the idea and come up with in this case, for instance, with eight variations of the initial idea to track travel days. Different segments may have different needs, and we leverage LLMs and the system, the business model canvas, to come up with those variations. Okay, we generated a bunch of variations, in this case, 8. Then what do we do next? Well, why don't we again employ LLM to basically do the following? We would describe the key customer segments. For instance, in this case, this is the first variation of an idea, an app that lets you track the travel days when you travel to Schengen zone. And we have 3 personas: a designer, a developer, and content creator that split their time or travel often to EU zone. And we leverage LLM to basically perform a virtual user board. As you can see, here's a transcript of an agent moderator that basically interviews those 3 participants, those 3 virtual personas that represent real personas in the deep research that ChatGPT helped us to conduct. We then basically simulate that real discussion of those personas. And what's important here is that I see more and more research papers that LLMs are great at reproducing the social experiment results. For instance, just 2 weeks ago, there was a research paper by Stanford around how basically what are the benefits and pitfalls of using LLMs to cut on time and costs to perform social experiments. And it seems like with some pitfalls, again, and we'll cover pitfalls on our course, but basically about 70% of insights that you can get through a real customer user board, you could get by simulating the personas. And what's great is that you can actually ground those persona descriptions on a real deep research that we performed for a given idea. So we have a transcript of personas discussing a specific idea variation and providing us feedback on, say, what are the 2 or 3 ideas of those 8 that should be actually turned into a prototype. And what's obviously, that LLMs like to please us, like what they call a sycophancy. How to overcome that sycophancy, how to avoid a situation where basically all of the user boards will say that all of the 8 variations are actually great. That's something that we will show you how to overcome, and basically how to really use these simulated user boards to pre-test and select the ideas for prototyping, so that then when we do a real market test, we have more promising ideas. And then when we have the most promising idea variations, we can then basically leverage the tools we have to actually generate the specific prototype. And this is where I basically hand it off to Alex to show you how to basically transform an idea variation that was validated through a virtual user board and turn that into a specific prototype. Alex?
Cool. I'm going to go share my screen now. And so some of the documents that we ended up creating were this is the, I think, deep research, market research document. We also have the variations of the ideas as well as the user board simulation. So with Lovable, it's a no-code web app builder. And the idea behind this is these AI tools do really well when you have the full context. So something that we're actually going to do is add in our project context, our project knowledge into this portion of the settings in lovable.dev or even in Cursor and any other tools. And so some of the initial documents that we're going to be generating include a product requirements document, the user flows, as well as maybe some backend specifications. So what's happening with, like, how do you calculate the days, or how do you calculate how long someone can remain in a country. And so the way I did this, I started by just asking ChatGPT here. We can use regular 4.0 or some of the more advanced models. We tend to use O1 Pro, but I can just show it using the base model as well that you get with the Pro plan, the regular plan. And so create a PRD for my idea. We're using Lovable and building a React plus web app. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to be copying the ideas that we were given here. So we have the calculator app idea, and then use the project context. And pretty much I'm going to be copying the market research as well too. And of course, a lot of this, a lot of the work that you end up doing, I think a lot of it should be spent on actually refining the product requirements document. For the purposes of this demo, we're kind of just gonna like speed run this. But I often just spend most of my time looking at like the product requirements documents. I look at the user flows, and I kind of just like map out the initial context. I even sometimes find I find like maybe screens from other services. So if you're building like a mobile app, you can even find like user screens to copy and paste into the project that can inspire, UI design for your project. But for now, we're just going to be using ChatGPT and Lovable to just generate these variations of the UIs. And we can see here that it's generating a product requirements document. It has our platform, it has the backend as well too. We can see that there's like an overview, the goals, and this is all information we got from the initial context that Bayram generated. And overall, everything looks pretty solid here. And it's going to generate pretty much everything in the product requirements document that can help guide the process. If you just throw in maybe the app idea into Lovable, you run the risk of essentially the LLM becoming too enthusiastic and just generating a lot of random features that you may not actually want. And we can see here that generated the PRD. Can you create a document for the user flows? So I'm going to generate a couple of documents here, like the user flows document. And we'll let that continue generating. And then the last document we're going to generate is maybe like the backend backend flows with Supabase, which is the database software that we're going to be connecting to. Lovable actually has a feature where you can connect a database to your project. For this demo, we're not going to be connecting Supabase yet, but it's good to have that document in the project settings as well too. We're using Supabase edge functions as well as local. Cool. So while that's generating, I'm going to be going into the PRD doc. I'm going to copy it, throw it into the project settings. So what I did was I just wrote create a blank project. This allows you to essentially add in all the project knowledge before you write any prompts so that it doesn't go off track. So we can actually save this here. And then I'm going to find the other documents. We have the user flows. And this is like the bare minimum context you can add to the context. Okay, great. So all right. So actually, we're going to skip the backend doc, or I can add in 7 other more complete one in another window here. So we can actually just save everything. And when we go back to the project, I suggest just for what we're doing is we're actually going to be testing out a couple of different landing pages because ultimately what people are buying from or interested in, the first thing they see is the landing page, or at least the first page. And a lot of what we're doing with the Evolutionary Founder is figuring out how to launch products, get into the hands of people, and getting real feedback. So create a landing page using the PRD in the project knowledge. So I spent a lot of time just perfecting, or at least making the landing page look according to the designs that I want. So sometimes I'll even generate, 5 different projects with different versions of the landing page with different types of design, different types of branding, just to get a sense of what looks good, what doesn't. And once you get started with building the project, sometimes you have like new ideas. So For this project, like maybe you want the calculator on the front page that people can access immediately, or you want people to, you know, um, just read what the have more like research in the beginning or have different types of copy. So you can test out all of this in Lovable and the different types of landing pages that you can generate. So we can see here, it's creating a landing page for us. And these days, it should really only take you, like 30 minutes to an hour to generate a landing page. And that allows for a lot of experimentation. So you can even have different versions of the landing page that you have people look at and test out and give you feedback right away. The meeting recording will be shared. So while it's generating, I can show you one of the variations that we ended up generating. So this is one of the generations. It's a very simple landing page, and it's really focused on one call to action, which is like you need a calculator to help you stay compliant with the 90 to 180-day Schengen rule. And what's cool about this landing page is that the calculator is right over here too. You can actually add in when's your trip going to happen, and you can actually add trip, and it brings you to the dashboard. And you can see here that your trip was directly added from the home page. And the way I got to this page was usually the starting PRD. Okay, great. So we can see here that the initial designs are pretty bad, I would say. They're not as good as like what I have here. And oftentimes that just requires you to maybe prompt it correctly. So improve the design of the page to be more like, I usually have a couple of like default prompts, like improve the design of the page to be more like Snap and Perplexity. Those are sites that Perplexity. These are like pretty easy to use prompts that it's like these are sites that I'm usually inspired by. So I would also like keep in mind like sites that you like the design of, and those can actually be used to improve the designs of your landing pages as well too. And a lot of these functions here are not active yet. It would take a little bit longer than the 20 minutes that we have here to implement them. But pretty much the purpose of this landing page is to get people to take an action right away, which is to add their trip and to actually see the functionality in play. And then as you get more feedback, you can actually improve, the UI, improve the functionality and features. And this is actually something I think that you can launch right away to maybe some initial user testers. So if you know digital nomads, so it's like I can even launch it to network school and get people to start using it and giving me feedback. And at the end of the day, we're designing for actual people, and this is a functioning prototype that people can actually start to use. And we can see here that it's improving the design of the landing page.
There's
Bayram, do you want to add anything else?
Alex, there's a question from Jim on LLM choices in the chat.
Let me double check. So use to generate this code on Lovable. So in terms of UI design, I tend to use Claude Sonnet. I'm pretty sure that's what Lovable is using, but if you're using something like Cursor or Windsurf, you can select your own models. So Claude Sonnet 3.7 is probably the best at user interface design. If you have clear product documents, Claude Sonnet 3.5 is better at following instructions, I would say. And if you're thinking about coding in general, with LLMs, Gemini 2.5 Pro is also really, really good now at coding as well too.
Yep.
So that's pretty much like my preferences.
Excuse me, Alex, would you recommend to touch on what you just said about Gemini and Claude and using ChatGPT Pro? Would you recommend jumping back and forth between LLMs, prompting different LLMs to see what the output is, or would you recommend just maybe focusing on one in particular and stick with it through the process?
So it depends what your goals are, but in terms of like UI generation, I tend to use tools like Lovable and like Replit, for example, or V0, or some like existing service that specializes in UI design. I find UI design harder to do just in like Windsurf or Cursor, just because the tools are generally more expansive. Like they give you a lot of different options to consider. So unless I have like very, very clear project definitions, like I know what the screens look like. So if I have like the Figma designs or I even have like screenshots, I tend not to go straight into Cursor or jump around. But I would recommend just like jumping around to different, like in Lovable itself, you can create a couple of different projects. So I can just show you in my dashboard, like maybe there's like 1, 2, 3. So it's like 3 versions that I like designed as well too.
I just want to add that typically these tools, they have things like visual bug fixing. Alex, if you want to show that, where basically instead of prompting, you can just, select the area you want to change and select it and make the change happen. This is very kind of, probably about this paradigm. What you see is what you get. This is basically this thing. And the second aspect of it is, of course, an ability to attach, say, a screenshot of a web app that you like and attach it and basically instruct the tool to follow the look and feel of that website. For the cases when it's not like a well-known website, but you still want to copy the look and feel and the design. The other thing, as Alex is generating other pages, is that, actually, you can use that these prototypes to conduct a real kind of customer interviews and testing, and that we will cover that as well, like how to find people, say, on Reddit and invite them to try the idea that you came up with, and how to actually leverage the Reddit to find ideas or pain points that people have and create a product to address them. Because I have this dream that at some point I'll just have an agent that constantly scans for all pain points covered on Reddit and learns, generates the deep research, the customer virtual user boards and things like that, generate the prototype and actually message them to try it. So I think at some point in future, at least that's a great direction to have to get to, is to basically automate this whole process that we will show you step by step because the tools are not reliable at the moment and they take time. But at some point in future, I think this feedback loop of finding the problem that users have, coming up with performing a research, coming up with the idea variations, generating those variations as a prototypes and testing them. That's the kind of iterative process that could be autonomous at some point in future.
Yeah, I mean, like one point to make is that almost 90% of this process right now is done by an LLM. And maybe like 10% is just the human kind of in the loop, like providing feedback, providing information, and context.
Yeah, Alex, there's a question from Simon.
Yeah, so what's the approach to the backend in the course? Is there a knowledge foundation you recommend, or do you see vibe coding doing most of that? So with backend, that's something that I would recommend. So the way we do it is using a more advanced planning model and a reasoning model like O1 Pro, if you have access to that. I think it's very effective at helping you define like the backend, and then going into a tool like Cursor, or even if it's like if this is for more like people who want to go deeper into like advanced tools like Cursor and Windsurf. Lovable actually does backend functions as well too, using something called Supabase edge functions. And that's something that covers most use cases for like the database, for any sort of like OpenAI calls, any sort of even like connecting to image generation, Lovable can do. So a lot of times if you're doing a more complicated backend build, I would recommend, and by complicated, I mean, maybe it's coordinating like 3 to 5 features or more. I would do something like Cursor and build it step by step. And there are processes that improve like the output, such as adding a project management like Taskmaster to Cursor. That's something that improves the results and keeps track of your project over time. So pretty much we have the whole range, which is like beginners, Lovable, use Lovable. You'll be able to do most backend stuff as long as you keep the scope of your project very, very contained and very, very specific. For people who want to dive into the more advanced, yeah, and there's other tools out there like Root Code Architect to generate like more complicated code and use cases as well too. And yeah, so
I think this one looks much better.
yeah, so this one is like it's like we have like a full homepage here. The Schengen calculator. I like the copy a lot better. You can see no sign up required to start using it. You even have like the Schengen status based on sample data. Yeah, overall this one, it's like there's still some like UI stuff that I'll have to fix, and then we have the pro features down here. I think it's much clearer, has a lot more information too. And then in the dashboard, you can see you can add in travel dates as well. Let's see if it works. So we can actually see the travel history here as well too. So this is even better version than the other landing page that I designed. Yeah, and so the way you would implement login, you would connect a service like Supabase. You can connect a project or organization. And once you've connected it, you can just ask Lovable, implement the login, implement the sign up, and just follow the instructions there. One resource that just for the purpose of this workshop, and for like in general, if you're using Lovable, there's documentation for a lot of the features that you would need to learn about. So you can see what integrations Lovable is very stable at using. So if you want to implement email, you can use Resend. If anybody is familiar with like automation tools, you can actually integrate with make.com. If you want to integrate different AI models for image generation or video generation, you can integrate Replit, and you can integrate with like OpenAI or Claude. And a lot of the best practices here help you prompt Lovable better. And there's just a lot of information here. But in our course, I think our goal is to just kind of like streamline the whole process. And of course, as you start to like develop your app further, you're going to have to dive deep into like the documentation, but we'll be open to like questions and improvements as well too. So in the live course too, we're pretty much going to be having like asynchronous communication too. So if you have any like need for support on your project, we can come and dive in and help you out there too.
Just an hour, but we still wanted to show you at least the initial 3 steps in a very kind of accelerated pace. But the idea is that obviously this is just the start. I mean, I know that one of the key misconceptions that first-time founders have is that launch is the goal. Well, actually, the whole thing starts after the launch. So the stuff that we will cover during the course is to actually how to launch, how to gather data, how to basically leverage the feedback that we're getting from market to evaluate the product, the idea variations that are the fittest, and then how to combine different idea variations with each other to come up with the next generation of variation. And that's basically what we will cover. And like Alex said, our goal is to help you like really develop 3 MVPs in 3 weeks. And when Alex was sharing the integrations that we have on Lovable, obviously payments is important. And you can build the app that has the functionality, the database, and the payments, and the email sending functionality and things like that. In those, you can build 3 variations of those apps in 3 weeks. That's our goal, and we will do our best to help you and to guide you through that process, because we think that probably now, since the costs and time to build the software decreases, the key focus is shifting towards your approach to the market test, to market research, and then your judgment to pick the ideas that are worth building and launching. That's basically what the course is going to be about, and looking forward to this, because I think this is a fun time to live, to basically be able to, apply this approach on so, because what I hate with VCs, and sorry if anyone is VC, is that they are playing the portfolio game while we founders were playing the like a single shot game, and this asymmetry is not fair. So by this system that we're proposing here, we're essentially trying to help founders employ a similar kind of strategy, a portfolio strategy, where you have a bunch of ideas generated and they compete on the market, and then you learn from those ideas and from the market feedback, and maybe cross-pollinate, combine those ideas into a next generation of ideas to build a more fittest app. And we'll even share some ideas how to learn from other apps that are successful to pick up the elements of their DNA, of their kind of success, and to try and test those in your idea variations. Because I think that could be important, because in the days when we built my previous startup, actually we had a regular activity of reviewing the top grossing apps in the App Store, and basically actually reviewing them, like watching the whole kind of onboarding and other functionality to try to understand what actually makes those apps successful. And what's funny is that sometimes these are very straightforward and small things like, I don't know, they have a subscription page in the onboarding, because some people just subscribe during the onboarding. So if you copy that element, you could be more successful, similar to how it's done in biology. We basically, the fittest species, in one way or another, by chance or through combination, they copy the traits of the other fittest the species and become more and more fittest. That's how it works, and I think we can employ a similar kind of approach here.